It's that time again. I didn't give a spoiler warning at the front of the last video, so here's my remedy for that now.
There's gonna be spoilers. Spoilers.
This week we're talking about the Demons of Punjab, the first episode of Series 11 that hasn't had any writing input from Chris Chibnall, I don't think. He co-wrote Rosa with Mallory Blackman. And the thing about the Demons of Punjab is it's written by Vinay Patel, and I struggled for a while about whether or not to immediately sit down and talk about this episode or to give myself time to watch it a second time. I ultimately decided not to give myself a rewatch because I want to sort of remain true to my initial mission statement with these particular videos, which would be that these would be my relatively quick, having just seen the episode thoughts, and you would have to go over to the other channel to listen to my discussion with my friends for deeper, more lengthy discussion. I know that most of these videos have already been pretty lengthy, but hey, relative terms here. Although I don't know if I'll be able to say that about this one, because I foresee this being a relatively short video. And the main reason for that is, having only just now come off seeing it the first time, I'm not really sure how to articulate what I feel about the Demons of Punjab. Do I think it's a good episode? Yes, I think it's a really good episode. If that's the simple, binary, black-white judgment call that you needed from me, then yeah, I give this one a thumbs up. The thing is, it's just hard to talk about because I can't really think of another Doctor Who episode like it. Like, at all. Even beyond subject matter, I'm talking like structurally, maybe even pacing-wise, it's a sort of unique creature in the life of this show. And keep in mind, part of what I've really enjoyed so far about Series 11 is that each episode feels unique amongst the season. So I feel like a lot of what we've been getting this series has been a very sort of varied, in terms of setting and subject matter and tone, feel, and I really appreciate that. That's what I come to this show for. And if we get more episodes like the Demons of Punjab, then this will be even more the show that I come to this show for, because it's such its own thing. Even Rosa, I was able to compare to previous historical episodes. I can't do that with this one. This isn't centered around a known historical figure the way that Rosa was, and so I could use that element of it to compare it to, say, Vincent and the Doctor and Unicorn and the Wasp and such. Demons of Punjab, there really isn't any other Doctor Who thing that's immediately coming to mind as a comparison point for this one. Which is absolutely a note in its favor, it just also makes it a bit harder to speak on. So the story here is that Yaz is speaking to her grandmother and decides to, get curious about what her grandmother's early life was like, particularly what her relationship was like with Yaz's grandfather. And so Yaz asks the Doctor to take them back to a time when they were together, and 13, being 13, just really cannot say no. And so they end up in 1947, August, and that sets them right in the middle of the Indian Partition, which is a historical event that I've only heard about in passing in, like, college history courses, so I cannot speak to that at all. As a real-life event that took place, all I can really do is talk about it in the context of this episode, where it's a very different sort of case. Again, comparing it to something like Rosa, where in Rosa, the racial tension sort of permeated the entire episode. It was the central focus of the entire running time, basically. Not a scene went by where the racial angle wasn't informing that episode. And the Demons of Punjab doesn't feel that way at first. It's not even until, I think, the final act of the episode where you realize just how much the partition isn't just an element of the setting, how much it really is the story of this episode. Because what we find out in this episode is that with Yaz's grandmother, the younger version of Umbreen, is getting married to a man named Prem. The day they decide to get married is the day that the border is put up. And so that creates some tension for their marriage, particularly with Prem's brother Manish, who at first seems like a cool guy, but as the episode progresses, you slowly start to see more and more just how much resentment he has over their sort of disregard for these borders. And again, the same way that you can take pretty much any historical episode and apply some of the politics to today's politics, he's very much played as kind of the troubled youth who is misinformed by very angry media. And the episode does a nice job not shoving that in your face, and yet still using Manish as a way to show just how harmful and backwards that kind of thinking is, and that sort of archetypal, nationalistic, opinionated young man who's getting his ideas from all the wrong places is. So in preparation for the wedding, the doctor and companions and Prem find a dead body, the dead body of a holy man, who was seen earlier in the episode, with two aliens standing over him. And these aliens are the Thajaran, I think? And the Thajaran, who the doctor knows as a species of assassins causing trouble, or so it seems, when really, as the doctor eventually uncovers through some weird kind of temporal visions, which are an aspect of the episode that I'm not 100% clear on, their culture has stopped being an assassin culture. They're actually the last of their species, the pair of Thajaran that she has just run into. And they've sort of taken it upon themselves to bear witness to all of the unwitnessed or lonely deaths of the universe, pretty much, which is a fascinating idea, but I'm not really sure how well that flies for reasons that I don't really want to get into right now, but there's something about the way that they operate that kind of nags at me. But what's brilliant about it is that, once again, like Rosa, it's using the sci-fi element to really underline how the historical aspect is the true story here. Because it turns out that these guys are not at all bad guys, so even more than Rosa, where the lesson was racism does not go away completely ever, and it permeates to the point where we have an antagonist who, despite being from a different setting and far off in the future, still embodies those ideals. The Thajaran just are not antagonists at all. And the antagonist of the episode, as it turns out, is the partition itself, is Manish, because Manish, and not the Thajaran, is the one who killed the priest. Why? Because he was so adamant about the separation between the Pakistani and the Indian that he murdered a man who was willing to, connect those two cultures through this wedding. And so this is very much an episode where, until the twist happens, which is, I want to say, with less than 10 minutes left in the episode, until that happens, you're not really sure where it's going, and you're not really sure what to make of it. But once that twist sort of clicks into place, that's when the whole thing, I think, comes together. And then the rest of the episode, in retrospect, not as you're watching it necessarily, becomes very, oh, I understand why all these choices were made, why we had to pace things this way. And so it's, like I said, another instance where the story is one of human nature and human history, and a human is our antagonist, sort of just the embodiment of the needless separation between races, between cultures, is the villain of this episode, and it's represented with this one guy, and it's not a case of murder mystery, oh, we gotta stop these aliens. And so it's sort of similar to what Arachnids in the UK does, where that conflict does not have its origins with aliens either, except while that played it more as, I think, an excuse to throw back to 60s and 50s B-movies with just, you throw toxic waste on an animal and that makes a giant animal. This is really a story with something to say about the dangers of this mentality and how it can rip families apart, how it can poison relationships between people that love each other. And yet the sci-fi element of the Jaren is not, it's not tangential to the story of this episode, it's supplemental. Because the story of the Jaren is of a race that did used to be nothing but assassins, and yet it was in their attempt to kill those of other cultures and those of other races and planets, made it so that they missed out on the destruction of their own planet. And so all they have left of their own people is this jar of dust, this jar of basically the condensed ashes of their homeworld to carry around with them. And this immense guilt makes it so that they have to intervene and bear witness to the deaths of other people, I'm presuming innocent people, who don't have their deaths appreciated as sort of a way to make up for what their people used to be. And so you compare that idea, the idea of a group of people so fixated or so preoccupied with destroying others that they miss out on their own world splintering apart. And you compare that to the partition as portrayed in this episode, where Manish is so preoccupied with drawing boundaries and stamping out what he sees as unfit and killing, if need be, in order to do that, that he lets it erode his relationship with his brother. It erodes the country over time. One of the men in the caravan that Manish calls to ultimately break up the wedding and eventually kill his brother is someone who fought with Prem in the war together, and that relationship, that bridge is now burned because of this hatred and this fixation. In a shot that I think is brilliant, where the man pulls the trigger and the sunlight of the sun just behind his hand blots out sort of the trigger just as he fires it, and that's when we cut, of course, in such a good moment. And the arc that it ultimately gives Yaz of wanting to fervently learn more about her family history, only to come to understand why her grandmother couldn't just tell it to her straight up, coming to really see firsthand just how difficult her own cultural heritage is and was for the people who lived through it. And it's all executed in such a way that's really powerful. This is a powerful episode. Some things I'm less sure about are just Ryan and Graham's place in the episode. Like, the Doctor is, we've got the alien stuff, she's got to deal with it, she drives the plot in a lot of ways, and she gets to do some doctory stuff, which is really, again, I want to reiterate this just because I know that there are some people who feel the need to have the Doctor be the center of attention in most episodes, or to have them. I'm fine, personally, in most episodes with the Doctor just kind of being there as a space Gandalf, as the supporting protagonist, I guess you could say, the one who gets stuff done but isn't the center of the storytelling. That's kind of my ideal place for the Doctor to be in most one-off episodes, not gonna lie. But Ryan and Graham, I don't know, we've had a lot of episodes, I think, in a row of Yaz maybe playing sort of third rung to the Doctor, and then Ryan and Graham getting a lot of stuff to do, and then her sort of just being there. Like, I don't want to make it sound bad, because I do like Yaz, but her character has kind of gotten the least meat of the TARDIS team so far up until this episode, and so I really appreciate it for really putting her in the forefront. And yeah, Vinay Patel, great job, man. Like, really, really excellent use of this show. I give you infinite kudos. You made a really good episode. Where it ranks next to Rosa and the Saranga Experiment, which, yes, I do still really like. Come at me, bros. Where it ranks next to those, I'm not 100% certain. It might rank above both of them. It might rank below both of them. I'm in an iffy place with it right now. I gotta see it a second, third, fourth time. But as far as recommendation goes, if you're some weird, crazy sicko who watched through this whole spoilery ramble about it before deciding to watch it yourself, Really good, top-notch stuff. Really exemplary episode of this show. And now I'm just talking in circles, so I'm gonna call it there. And see you next week.